"I am not here to discuss surrender, General Vexcor," Eliza replied, keeping her voice steady despite the towering alien's intimidating presence. "I'm here to establish a dialogue between our species." Vexicor's inner eyelids flickered, a gesture her briefing identified as skepticism. The massive war chamber they'd escorted her to was deliberately overwhelming, its walls displaying holographic recreations of Kralshak military victories. The message was clear: resistance is futile. "Dialogue," the general repeated, the translator rendering his tone somewhere between amusement and contempt. "Your kind always seeks words when actions are required. 3 other species attempted dialogue before we added their worlds to our territory. The other Kralshak warriors formed a semicircle behind their leader, armoured claws resting casually on weapon hilts. Their scaled skin shimmered under the harsh lighting, natural armour plates shifting with each breath. Eliza noted their positioning: tactical, ensuring multiple angles of attack. These weren't mere escorts. They were an execution squad if diplomacy failed. Perhaps they lacked the proper perspective, Eliza suggested, removing a small device from her uniform pocket. The warriors tensed, but she slowly placed it on the central table. "With your permission, a demonstration of human technology." Vexcor made a gesture. A subordinate approached, scanning the device with a wrist-mounted sensor before nodding. "Proceed, human." Eliza activated the holographic projector. A 3-dimensional star map materialized, highlighting both Earth and Kralshak territories, but also surrounding systems far beyond current human exploration capability. This region, she indicated a cluster of stars beyond both their territories, contains resources valuable to both our species. The Vargas asteroid belt alone holds more rare minerals than all currently contested systems combined. Vexcor studied the display, mandibles working thoughtfully. "These systems lie unclaimed." "They're beyond our current reach," Eliza admitted, "but not beyond our joint capabilities. I propose an alternative to conflict, General. Cooperative expansion that benefits both species without wasteful war." A strange sound emerged from the Kralshak leadership, a rhythmic clicking that her neural translator eventually identified as laughter. "Clever," Vexcor said, circling the projection. "You offer distant prizes to save your immediate worlds, the desperation tactic of a weaker species." "Not desperation," Eliza countered. "Efficiency. War costs resources, lives, time. Cooperation multiplies capability. It's simple mathematics." The general deactivated the projection with a dismissive swipe. "Mathematics does not build empires, Commander Chen. Blood and conquest do." He loomed over her, his massive head tilted downward. "We have studied your species, your divided governments, your philosophical debates about the ethics of warfare, your reluctance to embrace necessary violence." His voice dropped to a rumble that vibrated through Eliza's chest. "Tell me why we should not simply take what we want from such a soft species." Eliza met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because we're not as soft as you think, General. Humanity's history is written in blood. We've nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times with weapons of our own making. We choose peace not from weakness, but from having stared into the abyss of our own extinction." She stepped closer, violating Kralshak cultural norms of personal space. "And if forced to that abyss again, we will not go alone." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, Vexcor regarded her not as prey, but as an enigma. "You have 3 solar cycles to present your formal proposal," he finally declared. "Make it worthy of consideration, little warrior, or your next meeting will be in our combat arena, rather than our council chamber. The Krellshak delegation's reaction to Eliza's bold statement rippled through the chamber. Sub-generals exchanged glances, their compound eyes reflecting the holographic Earth military footage still playing above the table. "Pretty images prove nothing," growled Sub-General Thraz, the eldest of Vexacor's advisors. His scarred exoskeleton bore evidence of countless battles. "All conquered species boast of former glory." Eliza smiled thinly. "Then perhaps a demonstration is in order." She tapped her neural implant, sending a coded signal to her ship. "With your permission, General, I've instructed my vessel to transmit its sensor readings directly to your command displays." Vexcor made a sharp gesture. A subordinate verified the incoming transmission, then nodded. The chamber's main view screen activated, showing a real-time image of the station's exterior, and the small Earth diplomatic vessel docked alongside massive Krellshak warships. To the aliens' visible surprise, the human ship's sensor suite had penetrated their supposedly impenetrable shields, mapping detailed schematics of their propulsion systems, weapons arrays, and reactor vulnerabilities. "Impossible," Faraz hissed. "Our defense matrices cannot be scanned at this depth." 3 weeks ago, that would have been true, Eliza replied casually. "Our adaptive quantum sensors were developed specifically after analyzing debris from your skirmish with the Proxima colony. Small conflict, hardly worth remembering, but it provided exactly what our engineers needed." She deactivated the display with a gesture. "This isn't a threat, General. It's context. Earth doesn't want war because we've seen where arms races lead. But make no mistake, if pushed, we accelerate quickly." Vexcor studied her with new intensity. His mandibles worked silently before he spoke. "You risk much by revealing such capability, Commander. Some might consider it provocation." "I consider it honesty," Eliza countered. "In my research, I found that Krellshak respect forthright adversaries. Am I mistaken?" A low rumble emerged from Vexacor's chest, something between amusement and approval. "You are not." He circled the table slowly, claws clicking against the metal floor. "These contest rights you mentioned, they are rarely granted, even more rarely requested. The petitioning species must demonstrate exceptional qualities. And if granted, you would face 3 challenges of our choosing. Success would establish humans as a recognized species, neither prey nor threat, but equals of a sort." Sub-General Thraz bristled visibly. "High General, surely you cannot consider." Silence. Vexcor's tail slammed against the floor with thunderous force. The human's words merit consideration, at minimum. He turned to Eliza. "The challenges are not symbolic, Commander. Each carries genuine risk of death. Failure in any means immediate enforcement of our original terms, the surrender of your outer colonies and tribute of soldiers." Eliza maintained her composure despite the stakes. "And if I succeed in all 3, then the Krellshak High Command would be bound by ancient protocol to negotiate terms beneficial to both our species." Vexcor's eyes narrowed. Though in 8 centuries, no species has completed all 3 challenges. "Humanity specializes in doing the impossible," Eliza replied. "I formally request contest rights under Krellshak traditional law." The statement triggered immediate uproar among the delegation. Warriors thumped tails and clicked mandibles in what her translator identified as expressions of shock, outrage, and even grudging respect. When the commotion settled, Vexcor addressed her with ceremonial formality. "Commander Eliza Chen of Earth, your request has been witnessed by the High Command. You will be granted 3 sacred challenges, as is your right under the ancient protocols. Prepare yourself, The first begins tomorrow at dawn." As Eliza turned to leave, Vexcor added quietly, so only she could hear, "Your species surprises me, human. I look forward to discovering whether that surprise becomes respect or disappointment." Eliza led her newly arrived team through the station's xenobiology lab, which Vexicor had surprisingly granted them access to. Dr. Nassim immediately began analyzing tissue samples from previous Krellshek encounters, while Captain Jackson studied combat footage on a portable display. "Their physiology is remarkable," Dr. Nassim murmured, adjusting the molecular scanner. "Triple redundant nervous system, armored exoskeleton with tensile strength comparable to carbon fiber, and these glands." He pointed to purplish structures in the holographic display. "They produce combat stimulants on demand." "Wonderful," Captain Jackson muttered. "So they're walking tanks with built-in adrenaline dispensers." Dr. Wong looked up from her analysis of Krellshek tactical algorithms. "Their battle computers are impressive but predictable. They rely on overwhelming force rather than subtlety. The question is whether their simulation will use their tactical doctrine or allow for creative approaches." Eliza absorbed this information silently, her mind working through potential strategies. The intercom chimed, interrupting her thoughts. "Commander Chen," the Station A announced. "High General Vexcor requests your presence in the historical archives." Alone. Her team exchanged concerned glances. "It could be a trap," Captain Jackson warned. "Going alone is tactically unsound." "Or it could be a test of trust," Dr. Nassim countered. "Warrior cultures often value personal courage above tactical wisdom." Eliza made her decision. "Continue your analyses. I'll see what the General wants." The historical archives occupied the station's lowest level, a vast chamber filled with artifacts from dozens of species. Vexcor stood before a display case containing what appeared to be ancient bronze-coloured armour, much smaller than current Krellshek proportions. "Our ancestors," he said without turning as Eliza approached. "Before the Great Transformation." She studied the display carefully. They were smaller than modern Krellshek. "And weaker. Prey, not predators." Something in his voice, a subtle inflection the translator couldn't quite capture, suggested complicated emotions. "The transformation made us strong, but at costs few remember." Eliza sensed this wasn't casual conversation. "Why show me this, General?" Vexcor finally turned to face her. "Because you have requested contest rights, yet know nothing of their origin or true purpose." His compound eyes gleamed in the dim lighting. "The challenges date from before recorded history. Tests designed to identify species worthy of something our ancestors called the Greater Communion." He gestured toward an ancient stone tablet covered in symbols the translator couldn't process. The knowledge of what this communion entailed was lost ages ago. All that remains is the ritual itself, the testing of wit, body, and will. And no species has completed all three challenges. None. Vexcor moved uncomfortably close, his massive form blocking the chamber's exit. Some succeeded in one, fewer in two. All ultimately failed the third, or were not permitted to attempt it. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Not permitted. The High Command retains discretion over which species may attempt the final challenge. Those deemed unworthy of preservation are denied regardless of prior success. The implication was clear. Even if she passed the first two tests, the Krellshek leadership could still deny her the third challenge and claim justification for invasion. "That hardly seems fair," she observed. Vexcor made a sound her translator rendered as a harsh laugh. "Fairness is a concept for equals, Commander. You have yet to prove humanity deserves such consideration. Eliza considered challenging this assertion, but recognized a deeper opportunity. Thank you for this insight, General. It's valuable to understand the true context of these challenges. She turned to leave, then paused. One question. Why share this information with me? It provides no tactical advantage to your side. VexCorp was silent for a long moment. Perhaps I wish to see what humanity will do with knowledge no other species has been granted. His mandibles clicked softly. Or perhaps I simply grow weary of tests whose purpose even we have forgotten. As she returned to her team, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the warrior facade, VexCorp was testing boundaries that went beyond simple combat supremacy, as if searching for something his species had lost long ago. The aftermath of Eliza's unexpected victory in the simulation created a storm within the Kralshak fleet. As she was escorted back to her quarters, she noticed increased security and agitated discussions among warrior groups that fell silent as she passed. Your tactics violated all established combat protocols, Sub-General Thurs accused when he appeared at her door that evening. His anger was barely contained beneath formal diplomatic phrasing. Sacrificing command vessels is forbidden in civilized warfare. I wasn't aware the simulation had rules beyond survival, Eliza replied calmly. The objective was victory, not adherence to Kralshak military tradition. Fraz's mandibles clicked rapidly, a gesture Dr. Nassim had identified as extreme agitation. High General VexCorp has authorized the second challenge despite objections. Many believe you should be disqualified for dishonorable tactics. After the sub-general departed, Dr. Wong analyzed the simulation data Eliza had managed to extract during the test. Fascinating, she murmured, studying the code. The simulation was designed with built-in assumptions about command structure. It literally couldn't predict your asymmetric approach. Their entire tactical paradigm assumes hierarchical command decisions, Eliza observed. They can't conceptualize our distributed command structure or adaptability. Captain Jackson looked up from his physical training regimen. That's why human guerrilla forces have historically been effective against superior conventional armies. We thrive on chaos. Which explains their reaction, Dr. Nassim added. You didn't just beat their simulation, you violated their fundamental understanding of how warfare should be conducted. For a species that has ritualized combat into their cultural identity, that's deeply unsettling. A priority communication interrupted their discussion. Admiral Tejada appearing on the secure channel. Commander, we're detecting unusual movement in the Kralshak fleet. 3 dreadnoughts have repositioned to Jupiter's orbit. They claim it's a routine maneuver, but our analysts disagree. Eliza processed this. They're hedging their bets. If I fail the challenges, they want to be positioned for immediate invasion. Or they never intended to honor the contest outcome, Dr. Nassim suggested quietly. Stay the course, Commander, Tejada ordered. Earth's defense grid is at full readiness, but we're counting on you to prevent this from escalating. The Council has authorized me to offer additional concessions if necessary. With respect, sir, concessions would be interpreted as weakness, Eliza replied. The Kralshak respect only strength and adherence to their ancient protocols. If they violate those, they lose standing with other species. After the transmission ended, Eliza stepped onto the small observation deck attached to their quarters. The massive Kralshak flagship dominated the view, its weapons ports glowing with barely contained energy. You seem troubled, Commander Chen, came a voice from the shadows. VexCorp stepped forward, having somehow bypassed station security. Eliza controlled her surprise. Merely contemplating the upcoming challenges, General. And the dreadnoughts near your homeworld? His compound eyes glittered. Do not be concerned. They await the outcome of our contest, nothing more. Of course, she replied evenly. Just as our fleet awaits the same outcome near the Krelshuk colony world of Dracosis Prime. Vexcor went still. You bluff. Your long-range scouts cannot penetrate our defense network. Eliza merely smiled. Perhaps we should both ensure our forces maintain appropriate distances during these proceedings, as a gesture of mutual respect. The general studied her for a long moment, then inclined his massive head slightly. Indeed, respect must be maintained. He turned to leave, then added, Prepare yourself, Commander. The physical challenge begins at dawn, and Scarvex has been training specifically to counter human physiology. He has studied your species' weaknesses extensively. As have I studied yours, Eliza replied softly as the door closed behind him. She tapped her neural implant, sending an encrypted message to Earth Command. Position verified. Contingency Helios active. The arena's oppressive heat intensified as the combat dragged on. Sweat plastered Eliza's jumpsuit to her skin, while Scarvex's movements grew increasingly erratic. His initial precise strikes had devolved into desperate lunges, each missing by wider margins as his body temperature climbed dangerously. The Krelshuk audience had fallen into confused silence. Their cultural understanding of combat involved swift, decisive victories, not this prolonged war of attrition. Their confusion turned to outright bewilderment when Eliza continued avoiding direct confrontation, even as her opponent visibly weakened. Fight me. Scarvex roared, his translator struggling with his labored breathing. Coward, face me with honor. Eliza circled patiently, conserving her energy. Captain Jackson's research had been precise. Krelshuk warriors could maintain peak combat efficiency for approximately 12 minutes before their body temperature reached critical levels. They evolved as ambush predators, not endurance hunters. A furious lunge from Scarvex left him off balance. Seizing the opportunity, Eliza executed her first offensive move, a precise strike to the vulnerable junction between his primary and secondary breathing membranes. The warrior staggered, his respiratory system temporarily shocked. The crowd surged to their feet, mandibles clicking in collective surprise. This was not the clumsy defensive maneuver of prey, but the calculated strike of a hunter who had been patiently waiting for the perfect moment. Eliza followed with rapid strikes to the nerve clusters behind each knee joint, temporarily disrupting the neural signals to Scarvex's lower limbs. The massive warrior teetered, then crashed to the blue sand with a force that vibrated through the arena floor. 3 times he attempted to rise, each effort weaker than the last. On the final attempt, his overheated body simply refused to respond, his limbs trembling uncontrollably as cooling systems failed completely. The combat mediator approached cautiously, examining the fallen warrior before raising a ceremonial staff. The challenge is concluded. The human victor stands. The arena erupted in the rhythmic thumping that Dr. Nassim had identified as the hunt victory cadence. Eliza stood calmly at the center of the storm of sound, her posture deliberately neutral, neither celebrating victory nor acknowledging the crowd. As medical drones removed Scarvex from the arena, Vexcor himself descended from the command platform. The crowd fell silent as he approached Eliza. You defeated a superior opponent without killing blows, he observed, his voice pitched for her alone despite the arena's acoustic amplification. Explain. Death wasn't the objective, Eliza replied simply. Victory was. Most species attempt to overcome our natural advantages with technology or poison, Vexcor continued. You used only knowledge and patience. Curious strategy. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, General. Before we had technology, we chased prey until it collapsed for exhaustion. We're not the strongest species on our planet, but we're among the most enduring. Vexcor studied her with new intensity. Persistence hunting is considered primitive among advanced species. Yet you employed it with sophisticated understanding of Krellshack biology. The most sophisticated strategy is often the simplest, Eliza replied. Your warrior was superior in every physical metric except one. I exploited the single advantage I possessed. The general made a gesture she couldn't interpret. 2 challenges overcome in unexpected ways. The test of will awaits. But first, a question, Commander Chen. He leaned closer. Do you know why no species has completed all 3 challenges? Before she could respond, a commotion erupted at the arena entrance. Sub-General Thraz approached rapidly, surrounded by heavily armed elite guards. Hi, General. Thraz announced formally, we have intercepted transmissions from the human vessel. They have activated a weapons protocol designated Helios and positioned strike forces near sacred Krellshack territories. His eyes fixed on Eliza with undisguised hostility. They negotiate in bad faith while preparing for conflict. Vexcor turned to Eliza. The brief moment of connection shattered. Is this true, Commander? No less true than your dreadnoughts near Jupiter, General, she responded evenly. Insurance, nothing more. The arena had gone completely silent, thousands of Krellshack warriors watching the drama unfold. The final challenge proceeds as scheduled, Vexcor declared after a tense moment. But be warned, human. The test of will reveals all deceptions. If your intentions are not as stated, you will not survive it. The ancient chamber hummed with energy as technicians adjusted the crystalline pods. Eliza stood before hers, oddly calm despite the tension that had followed her from the arena. Dr. Nassim approached, speaking quietly to avoid being overheard by the Krellshack attendants. Commander, I'd analyzed all available data on this device. It appears to create a direct neural connection between participants, bypassing language centers. His expression was grave. The few surviving accounts from other species describe it as overwhelming. Reality and perception blur completely. Any advice on how to approach it? Eliza asked, watching Vexcor undergo ritual preparations across the chamber. The Krellshack consider it a battle of will, but I suspect it's more complex. Their warrior psychology interprets everything as combat, but the technology predates their culture. It may have been designed for something else entirely. Before Eliza could respond, ritual attendants approached to escort her to the pod. The crystalline structure pulsed with internal light that seemed to follow patterns just beyond comprehension. As she stepped inside, the transparent material flowed around her like liquid, then solidified. Across the chamber, Vexcor entered his pod with ceremonial precision. Their eyes met briefly before the pods activated fully. Reality shattered. Eliza found herself standing on Earth, but not the Earth she knew. Cities burned on the horizon. Krellshack warships darkened the sky. The ground beneath her feet was littered with human bodies, some still moving, calling for help with familiar voices. Her parents, former crewmates, friends. This is the future. Vexcor's voice resonated around her, impossibly large. His mental presence loomed like a storm cloud. Your resistance only prolongs suffering. Submit, and some may be spared. The visions intensified. She experienced her own death in dozens of variations, each more visceral than the last. The emotional impact was overwhelming, grief and horror threatening to drown her consciousness. Eliza rallied her mental discipline, remembering Dr. Nassim's words. This wasn't simply combat. The technology had another purpose. Instead of fighting the visions, she opened her mind to them, acknowledging their horror while recognizing their nature as constructs. "Is this how you see conflict, General?" she asked into the mental maelstrom. "Only total victory or absolute defeat? Only conqueror or conquered?" She pushed back, not with similar visions of destruction, but with Earth's complex history. The terrible wars that taught harsh lessons. The enemies who became allies. The painful growth of understanding that came through shared suffering. She showed him children playing in parks built on former battlefields. She showed him the Berlin Wall falling, former enemies embracing. She showed him the first United Earth Council, where nations that had once aimed nuclear weapons at each other now worked together. Humanity has lived your nightmare, Vexicor. We've stood at the precipice of self-destruction many times. Our strength isn't in never falling, but in how we rise afterward. The mental landscape shifted, becoming neither Earth nor Krellshak territory, but a neutral space. Vexcor's presence remained overwhelming, but no longer dominated completely. "You speak of weakness as strength." His mental voice seemed uncertain. "Of defeat as victory. Your thoughts are chaotic, contradictory." "That's humanity's true nature," Eliza replied. "We contain multitudes. Our diversity of thought is our greatest advantage. Where your culture values uniformity, we thrive on difference." She sensed his confusion, a concept so foreign to Krellshak psychology that he struggled to process it. Then, unexpectedly, he opened his own mind further. Beneath the warrior's thoughts lay older memories, cultural fragments preserved through generations. Glimpses of what the Krellshak had been before. Something changed them. Before she could explore this revelation, the connection began to destabilize. The neutral landscape fractured, reality reasserting itself. As the link dissolved, Eliza caught a final impression from Vexcor, not hostility or confusion, but a profound sense of loss. And beneath it, almost undetectable, hope. Eliza gasped as the crystal pod released her, lungs burning as if she'd been holding her breath for minutes. Across the chamber, Vexcor emerged more slowly, his massive form uncharacteristically hesitant. The attending priests waited expectantly. By tradition, the challenged species always broke under the test of will, surrendering mentally before physical release from the pods. Vexcor stared at her with an expression the translator couldn't interpret. Finally, he spoke a single phrase in the ancient ceremonial language. The priests recoiled in shock. Dr. Nassim rushed to Eliza's side as she steadied herself. "Commander, what happened?" "He just declared the test incompletely concluded. That's unprecedented." "I think," Eliza said slowly, watching Vexcor confer urgently with the priests, "we both saw something we weren't expecting." The Krellshak High Command's private chamber resembled an ancient war room more than a modern conference center. Holographic displays showed fleet deployments and resource calculations, while physical artifacts of conquered species adorned the walls like trophies. Eliza pressed her back against the narrow maintenance shaft, her neural implant struggling to translate the rapid heated exchanges. The High Commanders spoke a formal dialect different from standard Krellshak, more complex and riddled with archaic references. The human female has satisfied the protocols, insisted a voice she recognized as belonging to Korvax, the youngest sub-general. The test of will ended in unprecedented balance. The ancient texts are clear. She has earned continuation. Balance is not victory, countered Faraz. The protocols demand absolute supremacy of will. For 8 centuries, we have maintained this standard. 8 centuries of waste, rumbled Vexcor. His voice carried a weariness Eliza hadn't heard before. 8 centuries of conquest without purpose, seeking species who might help us break the chains of our condition. Blasphemy. Fraz's voice rose. Our sacred duty is combat. The great victor demands our conquest. The great victor is a lie, Vexcor replied softly. A construct created to make our enslavement bearable. You know this, Fraz. All high commanders learn the truth upon ascension. A heavy silence followed this statement. Eliza strained to catch every word as Vexcor continued. Before the Shapers came, we were philosophers and artists. They remade us into living weapons, our bodies, our minds, even our society engineered for perpetual warfare. When the plague destroyed them, they left us with artificial compulsions we cannot overcome and a metabolism that requires resources found only in specific systems. These are sacred mysteries not for human ears, warned another voice. Yet the human showed me something during the test, Vexcor replied. Their species faced extinction multiple times by their own hand, yet found paths beyond violence. Perhaps they could help us find ours. Fraz slammed something against a surface. While you philosophize, their fleet activates the Helios Protocol. Scans indicate energy signatures consistent with planet-killer technology. They speak of peace while preparing destruction. Eliza's blood ran cold. Contingency Helios wasn't a weapon system. It was a diplomatic protocol authorizing final settlement terms. Someone had deliberately mistranslated the communication to suggest military preparation. The human commander has proven worthy of direct inquiry, Vexcor declared. I will speak with her privately before the council votes on invasion. Eliza retreated silently through the maintenance shaft, mind racing. The true nature of the Krellshak was far more complex and tragic than humanity had imagined. Not natural conquerors, but slaves to artificial biological imperatives, fighting wars whose purpose they've forgotten. Back in her quarters, she found her team engaged in heated debate about the test of Will's unexpected outcome. Commander, Dr. Nassim looked up anxiously. We've been analyzing the ancient language used during the ceremony. The phrase Vexcor used, incompletely concluded, appears in only one other historical record. A negotiation with a species called the Morrigan, over 4,000 years ago. What happened to them? Eliza asked. Dr. Wong's expression grew somber. According to fragmentary records, they were on the verge of a technological breakthrough that might have helped the Krellshak. Before it could be implemented, extremist factions on both sides triggered a conflict that resulted in mutual destruction. A priority communication alert interrupted them. Vexcor requesting an immediate private meeting. He's coming here. Captain Jackson moved instinctively toward his weapon. No, Eliza replied, making her decision. I'm going to him. Alone. Commander Fats. Necessary, she cut him off. What I learned during the test changes everything, and I believe he knows I've discovered their secret. She activated her neural implants recording function. If I don't return, transmit everything to Earth Command. Tell them the Krellshak aren't what we thought. They don't want war, they need help. As she prepared to leave, Dr. Nassim caught her arm. What exactly did you see in there, Commander? A species crying out from behind a mask they can't remove, she replied quietly. And I think Vexacorp is trying to find a way to take it off. The assembled Krellshak and human delegations fell into stunned silence as Eliza's proposal appeared on the main holographic display. It wasn't the expected peace treaty or surrender document, but something unprecedented, a comprehensive research initiative combining Earth's biochemical expertise with Krellshack genetic knowledge. This proposal is an insult. Sub-General Thraz finally broke the silence, mandibles clicking furiously. We require territories, not laboratories. You require thallium compounds. Eliza corrected calmly. The territories are merely a means to that end. Our scientists believe we can synthesize compatible alternatives within 5 years, while developing treatments to reduce your species' engineered dependencies. And in exchange, questioned Korvax. Technological cooperation, Eliza replied, particularly in fields that benefit both our species. Defensive systems against common threats. Cultural exchange to rebuild what was lost during the Great Transformation. VexCorp studied the proposal carefully, compound eyes reflecting the scrolling details. Your solution addresses our immediate biological needs, but not our compulsions. He chose the word delicately, aware of the younger warriors in the chamber who hadn't yet learned the truth of their condition. Phase 2 includes neurological treatments, Eliza explained, advancing the display to detailed medical schematics. Your warriors would retain their physical capabilities, but gain control over the artificial aggression responses. Choice, not biological imperative. Murmurs spread through the Krellshack delegation. For the older commanders who knew the truth, her words carried profound implications. For the younger warriors raised on stories of glorious conquest, they sounded like an attack on their very identity. You proposed to change what we are, accused a young warrior captain, rising to his feet. To make us weak, like humans. I propose to restore what you were, Eliza countered, while preserving what you've become. Strength without slavery to compulsion. The choice is yours. The chamber erupted in debate. Warrior factions argued passionately against tampering with their nature, while scientific advisors studied the human research with growing interest. Through it all, VexCorp remained silent, watching the divisions his species had long suppressed rise to the surface. Finally, he rose to his full impressive height, and the chamber instantly quieted. For 10,000 cycles, we have conquered because we must, he began, his voice carrying the weight of formal declaration. Our bodies demand resources our original homeworld cannot provide. Our minds drive us toward conflict we cannot resist. He moved to the center of the chamber, mandibles working with emotion the translator couldn't fully convey. We tell ourselves these compulsions are sacred, that our conquests honor the great victor. But these are stories we created to bear our shame. Shocked whispers spread among the younger warriors. Thraz rose in protest, but VexCorp silenced him with a gesture. What the human commander offers is not weakness but liberation, not defeat but possibility. He turned to face Eliza directly. For the first time since the Shapers abandoned us, we are offered a path beyond endless war. The ancient chamber, which had witnessed countless war councils and invasion plans, now held a moment of profound silence. Then a young scientist warrior stepped forward. High General, if what you say is true, then our entire history, his voice faltered, is not diminished, VexCorp finished. Our courage, our honor in battle, these remain true achievements. But imagine those qualities directed by choice, not compulsion. Eliza watched as the assembled Krellshack processed this revelation. Some reacted with anger, others with confusion or relief. The identity of an entire species hung in balance. I propose a modified agreement, VexCorp finally announced. We accept the Human Research Initiative, but maintain our military posture during its development. Trust must be earned on both sides. He extended a massive clawed hand toward Eliza, a gesture unprecedented in Kralshak diplomatic history. Not peace through surrender, Commander Chen, but partnership through strength. Can your species accept these terms? Eliza took the offered hand without hesitation, her smaller fingers barely spanning his armored palm. Partnership through strength is the most human concept you could have proposed, General Vexicor. Earth accepts. As the formal documents were prepared, Vexicor spoke quietly for her ears alone. You saw our true nature during the test, yet offered help instead of exploiting weakness. Why? Because 8 centuries ago, we were not so different from you, Eliza replied. A species driven by conflict, biology overriding wisdom. We found our way forward. Perhaps together we'll find yours.